All right, guys, today we're headed down to go look at and hopefully purchase a new car. Now, I've wanted one of these for a bit, but if you had told me 5 years ago that I wanted one of these, one that I'd be going to potentially buy one, I would not believe you. This has never been my type of car. So I've been looking for a bit, but I tried to be an adult and be responsible. I told myself I had to sell something first before I could buy another car. I already don't use all the cars that I have. I hate having vehicles that just sit around and collect dust and don't get used. I'm just not one of those people that can have a car just for the sake of having that car. There's so many cars I want to experience, and to do it, I just, got to sell something, move on, because otherwise you can only drive so many cars. So what we decided to sell to make way was the Pulsar. So I've had that car for a couple years. Really cool little car. It was a really good car. I mean, it did me really well. I never really had any issues with it. And if you told me 2-3 years ago that I would be getting rid of that to buy this, I would have never believed you. They're kind of polar opposites, from that car to this car. But it was just time. What I want in a fun daily driver, cruise around car has completely changed. And I'd have my fun with the Pulsar. I didn't want to go down the rabbit hole with it. So we sold that. Nice kid bought it. He seems really excited about it. And we made room and we looked around. I wasn't taking it that serious, but we found this car, and it's actually a guy I know, and it is a screaming good deal. So there's a couple little issues it has. I'm hoping that that's all there is to it, because if it is, it's some stuff we can fix hopefully fairly easily. But it is a really, really solid deal, and it's exactly what I was looking for. So I'm excited. If it works out, this is going to be really cool. If not, then we'll make a 6-hour round trip for fun. We'll have a nice little road trip. We're cruising through the country. We took a different route, just to make the drive more interesting. So, hey, nice fun road trip. So anyway, we'll get there, we'll check it out, see how it goes. We made it. These things just look so good. I love the way these cars look. I like the grills, the grill shape. There's not many new cars that I look at and go, I like the way that looks, but this is one of them. The carbon side skirts and stuff, the holes in the seat. All right, well, here it is, my new to me F80 M3. So I'm incredibly excited about this car, for what I intend to do with it. It's kind of purpose that it's gonna serve. And it's always important to me that a car has a purpose. If it doesn't really have a purpose or a use, it just feels silly to me to own it. So this car does have a purpose, and I'm very excited about kind of what it represents, I guess, and the things that we can do with it and the fun we're gonna have with it. That's what I see in this car. And it is weird for me because, as I mentioned before, this kind of car has never been my cup of tea. This just hasn't been my thing. These kind of cars at all, they've never done anything for me. I think it's just the idea that it's just a stock car anyone can go buy. There's nothing special about it. But as I've gotten older, as things have changed, as I've built different cars and tried different things, I've really started to fall in love with the idea of a car like this. And I started looking for these, and I was being impatient. I wanted one so bad. I got on this kick where I really wanted one. My buddy Ben had bought one. He let me drive it, and I was hooked. And you never want to buy a car when you're being impatient. usually leads to making bad decisions, buying bad deals, or not being thorough when you're looking at a car, things like that. So I took a step back. I decided, got to sell the Polestar first. I put some effort into that. It was good kick in the butt to get that thing going and get it sold, And then once it was sold, I started looking again, but with more patience. And this deal popped up, which it's a bit of a gamble, but if it pays off, we're going to be in pretty good shape. So the story behind this car is, I was looking, I found it for sale. I recognized the shop it was at. It was at Spark Speed Shop, which is the guy Nick that runs that. He's big in the drifting community. I've heard a lot about him. I know a lot of people that know him. I have met him briefly. So I started talking to him, and he gave me the full backstory on the car. Him and a buddy who had the hookup on BMW parts bought it. It was wrecked in the front. Not too bad. I saw the before pictures. It wasn't totaled. It's clean title. So it was wrecked. They fixed it. They got it about 90% of the way there, and then just kind of ran out of the motivation to finish it out that last 10%. They both had things that they would rather spend the money on than having it parked in this car and having to put even more time and money into it to get it to that 100%. So they decided to sell it as is, and that's how we got it. So the bad, again, the car was wrecked. It's got scuffs and scrapes. It's got some paint missing here, something going on here. It's got these little odds and ends, but as a whole, it's in good shape, and it's kind of the perfect car for me. I'm bad at having really nice, perfect things. I just end up scratching them myself and doing things. I try my best to take care of them, but I like having things that I'm not afraid to use, and I'm not worried about it getting a little chip or a scratch or a rock chip or things like that. I'm not the type of person that can own a car like that and detail it every weekend. It's just not me. So really, it's kind of perfect in that sense. So really, the biggest issues aesthetically are over here. You can see the door is pretty damaged. It hasn't been replaced. So we either need to replace it or get it fixed, whichever one. We're missing the side skirt on this side. He is going to send that to me, but it's probably, some of the tabs are broken, so we might just be better off replacing it as well. And there's a couple other little things. We need to get the front splitter back on and things like that. But, I'm sure there's a few other things I'm missing, but that kind of stuff doesn't really bother me too much. One, it's known, we can see what it needs. And two, again, it's not that big of a deal. We'll get that stuff fixed up in time. It doesn't keep us from driving the car or driving it the way we want to. But the other problem, and where we really took a gamble and what does limit us, is the mechanicals. So we're getting some errors for the pedestrian warning system and some things associated with that, as well as chassis stabilization, which, since the chassis stabilization code is on, it locks you out of using any of the M modes. Right, so it keeps you from putting it in the sport mode and shifting it aggressive. It basically puts it in efficient, drive it like a grandma kind of mode, which it still rips. Like, you get on it, it forces you to shift early. It doesn't let you be aggressive on the downshift. Doesn't let you take traction control off. All the things you want to do when you got a BMW with the turbo engine. So the other issue is up front here. We have a squeak. Now, it definitely seems like just a simple serpentine belt issue. We need to replace some of the pulleys, the idlers, and the tensioner and go ahead and throw a new belt on it, and hopefully that will cure that. It definitely seems to be a serpentine belt noise. It just, the way it comes and goes and things like that. As you can see, those of you who know these cars and what they look like, we don't have the carbon fiber strut brace on now. We've got that over there, so we need to put that on. We've got parts in the trunk like the fender liners and some other little things that need to get reinstalled. So again, this car, it's essentially at 90% fixed, and we need to carry it through that last 10%. So we got a pretty good idea on what might be causing the stabilization stuff and what might be causing the pedestrian warning stuff. And if we can fix those fairly easily, we will be in really, really good shape. I told you the bad, but the good is why we took the risk. So it's a 2018. So it got updated headlights, it got lane assist, some other odds and ends and features. It's cool. It's not something that was really a deal breaker, but obviously it's preferred. I'd much prefer the 2018 if I could get one, and this one's a 2018, so that's nice. The other thing is it is a comp package. So it's got some carbon stuff, which we're missing one on that side. It's got the cool bucket seats with the slits in them, the holes in them. It's got a different exhaust, different tune. It's some trinkety stuff. It's some technical BMW stuff. But for what I wanted this car for, I was hoping to find a comp package if I could. That was the ideal, obviously. Another thing it has is a carbon fiber roof. So this is pretty cool. They all come with this. unless you option for a sunroof, which for whatever reason, a lot of people option for the sunroof, which is kind of ironic because they're paying extra to get rid of the carbon fiber roof. I'd much rather have the carbon roof. I don't really care for sunroofs, so I was happy to see that this car had that. That was another nice bonus, but the biggest thing, and the reason why I took the gamble on this car, is if you look right here, you can see these emblems light up. Now, it's not because the emblems light up, but as you can see, it still has the plastic on them. And the reason why is because this thing only has 13,000 miles on it. 13,000 miles, which, I mean, to me, that's essentially a brand new car still. That is absolutely nothing. And for what I got this car for, that would have bought me, you know, a 2016 with 80 to 100,000 miles on it, which, you know, a lot more likely for things to go wrong with the higher mileage. I was hoping to get a lower mileage one just so I could thrash on it with less worry. So that's really the big thing. It checked all the boxes. It's essentially exactly what I wanted. It's just, there's some unknowns. If we're lucky, we'll be into fixing this thing for very little money and we'll be on our way. We'll have a low mileage comp package car for a really good price. If we're not lucky, obviously we're gonna have to go deeper than that. But you know, when I get a car like this with unknowns, kind of an unfinished project, I always assume worst case. And even worst case, if I had to put an engine in this thing, I'd still be okay with the total investment. So that's why I went for it. So hopefully it works out, hopefully it's good. We've looked around it and it seems pretty solid. So hopefully we can just get those little issues fixed and just get out there and start enjoying it, because that's the point. So I'm gonna lift this thing up, I'll show you underneath, and then we'll take it for a drive. So the damage was from the front. You can see some damage on the control arms. It looks like we're gonna need to replace this tension arm. The bushing just seems a little blown out, and this side has a little bit more caster. The subframe, I believe, was replaced. You can see the exhaust. I mean, it's obviously what you expect under here for a 4-year-old car. There is some oxidation on the aluminum and some corrosion on the bolt heads. I know this car did spend a little bit of time in the Northeast, but I have a friend who has one that lived in Florida its whole life, and it's very similar. So there's no rust on the car, it's just the bolt heads have some corrosion. But otherwise, I mean, again, what you expect. It's not like we're looking under some 30-year-old Japanese car that had to not get messed up for 30 years, you know. It's just a newer car. It didn't have a lot of time to get beat up and rusted and things like that. So nothing too exciting under here. But you can see with the fender liners out, you've got all this wiring exposed, stuff that can get rubbed on. So that's why we need to get that stuff fixed ASAP, minimize our drive time on it until we have all those odds and ends taken care of. But that's pretty much the gist of it. These things are really cool. I won't get too nerdy on the details because I'm sure a lot of you already know, or if you don't know, you might not care. But I mean, they have an electric locking diff, a magnesium oil pan with double oil pickups. The thing that I really like about these cars is it seems like they were designed to be beat on. You know, they were designed for you to be able to take them to a track and lap them and them not overheat, not have issues, not have to baby them. And that's what I want out of this car, just to be able to enjoy it and thrash it and not worry about it. So that being said, let me drop this thing down. Let's hop in it, go for a ride, see how it drives. We messed a little bit with the alignment. It was a little off. And done a couple other little things. Hopefully they make a little improvement while we wait for the rest of the parts to get here. So I'm resetting the tire pressure. We're at 64%. So we'll see what that does, if anything. Steering wheel's still a little crooked. I adjusted the alignment some. It was crooked. The toe was off. Well, I didn't toe plate it. I just eyeballed it because we're going to be pulling the rack out anyway and swapping it. So the cool thing about these cars is they're not auto. See, I'm off the clutch. It's creeping forward, but because we're downhill. If we're uphill, it would roll backwards. So it's essentially an automated manual. It functions like a manual gearbox, one-to-one connection. There's no torque converter. It just automates the process of changing gears. Instead of you pushing the clutch in and changing the gear, it's doing that all automatically. So that's what was really cool to me when I kind of made that connection. you know, that a car with paddles like this, you can do this. You can put it in drive, and it drives pretty much like an automatic car. You have some stuff you feel when you give it a little gas, and then it starts to engage the clutch and it goes. But it does it obviously very smoothly. But you lose a little bit of that comfort that you would have in an auto. But again, when you want to drive it like a race car, it's essentially a manual. See, it won't let me, it'll let me downshift. It just won't let me shift down to like second gear. Basically limiting you as to how aggressive you can downshift, because it's the chassis stabilization isn't working, so it doesn't want you to get super wild expecting there to be all these assists and there not be any of these assists. But this is so cool. I can't wait to get this thing sorted, man. It's so painful but amazing. Like, just driving it, I'm so excited for what this car is going to be like when it's sorted. But then also there's that, like, still got to get it sorted. And it sucks that, you know, there's that little bit of unknown there. But, man, these cars are so good. Oh, they're so good. I've, again, never wanted a car like this. But as I got older, as I started building cars, I realized, you know, I was kind of trying to make my cars like an OEM sports car. Like, trying to, you know, get that performance. See, there it goes, shifting automatically on me. Trying to get that performance, that fun factor, that enjoyment, but with comfort. Doing it comfortably. When you want to drive just chill and you want to just get from A to B, you can. You know, in this car, you know, the fun for me of this car is that, and the fact that I really admire now an OEM car where they took the time to make it something that performs exceptionally well. And these cars are fast, they handle really well, they're really fun to drive, but they're incredibly comfortable. I mean, we're cruising in 6th gear right now. It's like nothing. Like, you could drive this all you wanted, not get tired. You could drive it in traffic and not be annoyed. But we drive it 8 hours to the Dragon and go blast it around the tail of the Dragon, and then drive home. And that's, I guess, the allure to me of a car like this. Like, having that performance from a stock car and having a car to do that kind of thing with, you know. For me, drifting, and it's hard to explain this, and I've heard other people that I watch that do drag racing, you know, they get into more simple cars and start playing around with simpler, slower car stuff, and they can't really explain why it's so enjoyable. And, you know, to say that it's enjoyable is like saying the super high level stuff is not enjoyable. It's not that, it's just, you know, for me, when I go to a drift event or a drift competition, there's a lot involved. There's prepping the car, mounting tires, loading the trailer, planning, making sure I have fuel, making sure I have nitrous, making sure I have the tires. And there's all this stuff to go there and do it. Whereas a car like this, I can get in it today, well, if it was fixed, right? Drive it all the way up to the tail of the Dragon, you know, go stay at an Airbnb and drive back. All I got to do is pack my clothes, you know, and I guess it's weird for me. It's weird because, you know, when these cars came out, I remember we got one at BC. I did the R&D work on the coilover kits, and it didn't do anything for me. You know, riding in it, I didn't have any interest in this type of car, like, just none. And now it's like I'm so in love with the idea of this car. I guess it's just age. I always say I'm getting old. I'm 29, but it's just as you get older, you realize these things, you know. See if it goes off at 40. Yep, see, it does it every time at 40 miles an hour. So if you had asked me years ago, you know, would you rather, let's say I gave you a 60 grand budget or a 70 grand budget or whatever it is, would you rather have, you know, a newer sports car, or would you rather buy, you know, something like an Evo 8 and have 30 grand to put into it? I would always choose the option where I'm putting money into it, because I can make it whatever I want, and I feel that I can make it better than the new car, faster. But what I've realized as I've built different cars for different reasons is it's tough, man. It's tough to beat the manufacturer. Like, they spend millions of dollars in R&D, and, you know, you might make a car that's faster for less money, but then it's going to kind of suck on the street. Then you might make a car that's more comfortable for less money, but then sacrificing the performance, you know, fine-tuning that balance is really difficult to do. Can't tell if there's a car behind us or not. Wish I had a zoom lens. Downshift, bitch. It's so good. I love it so much. It's the first time I've done that since I got this thing. I haven't driven it much because, you know, the squeak and we got this stuff we need to fix, but you can just wear on the brakes. Downshift. You know, this is so new to us. You know, we're used to driving around 90s JDM shit boxes, if you will. You know, cars that rattle and make noises, and those cars do elicit emotion, and that's what's cool about them. But as I've gotten older, you know, I used to not care if my daily driver had AC. I took it out of one of my 240s because I swapped it, and I didn't even care about trying to keep it. It didn't bother me a bit. But as I've gotten older, I have those cars, and I have the ability to enjoy them. I have the 8.6, which is going to be carbureted and super old school, and that mechanical nostalgic feel. I've got the Safiro, which is, you know, a street car. It's fun to drive, but I have to be in the mood to drive those cars. If I'm just trying to go to the store and get something, 90% of the time I end up taking my dually. I end up taking my truck because I just, you know, it's just easy. I can just get in and go. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about having an issue. I don't have to sit there and shift. I don't have to deal with being hot and no AC. So there's just having a car that you can both enjoy ripping on, but also be comfortable in and get in and put it in drive and just cruise to the store. Like, that's such a cool concept to me. So again, I'm not trying to oversell it. It's just, for me, this is something I never thought I would ever buy, something I never thought I would ever get, never really thought I'd be able to get something like this, you know. And I always thought, you know, just to have something cool like this that was fast and whatever, I'd have to build it myself. It's just such a new world to me, and one of my biggest deal breaker was it could not be a proper manual. It couldn't be, which sounds crazy coming from a person like me. Like, I'm a car guy. I like manuals. I obviously, I don't have anything against manuals, but I don't know how to work the wipers on this thing. Oh god. For this kind of car, I wanted to get that technology. You know, I'm getting this new of a car. I want the fancy double clutch gearbox. You know, that's what I want out of it. That's what I want it for, is to be that kind of a car. So that was literally a deal breaker. I was like, if it has a manual trans, I don't want it. Just the full throttle upshifts are so cool. Moral of the story is, this thing puts a smile on my face. I love it. I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that we'll fix the issues without too many headaches. Hopefully it's something simple. If it is, that would be great, but I really want to get this thing dialed in so we can start making trips in it, taking it to the Dragon, taking it to the track, and just start enjoying what it is to have a car like this. Again, never thought I'd have a car like this. And I guess that might have been part of why I had no interest in them, was I never felt like I'd be at the point where I could get one, you know? So it was like, why even bother? Why want over a car that I'm never going to be able to get? And that might be small-minded, you know, I guess. But that was just the way I was. I liked things that were attainable. And these cars were never really something that was attainable to me. The AC is pretty icy in there. My glasses are fogged up. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's with the exhaust open, the valves open. Overall, it seems like a pretty solid car. I haven't driven it a ton, but I feel like I've driven it enough to where
it seems like it's all right. We just got to fix those couple little bugs. But you can see the headlights. It's got the cool headlights with the talos. I'm pretty happy with it, man. I really like the red interior. I've always wanted a car with red interior. I originally thought I would have preferred black for this kind of car, but after seeing the red in person, I really like it. So overall, I'm really happy with this thing. I know this has been a lot of jibber jabbering, but that's my new car. I'm super excited. It's crazy. It's just so different than anything I've ever had or whatever. So I'm excited to see what it's like to own and enjoy a car like this. But first we got to get her fixed up. So we're gonna get her back in the shop, wait for some parts to get here and start trying to get it dialed in so we can start enjoying it. So anyway, I guess that's gonna be it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.